Welcome back. I'm Ava Vitale.
And I'm Constance Gibbs.
We hope you put the kiddies to bed and are ready to sit back, relax, and chat about the realities of parenting and the importance of reading aloud.
We've gathered 4 great panelists to chat with you about tips for creating a space for reading at home. As you hear more about the tips and tricks, you'll have a chance to enter questions or even some concerns you may have here in the chat, and we'll answer them.
Also, keep an eye out in the chat for the game link for a chance to win a collection of our favorite World Read Aloud Day top book picks. Perfect for reading aloud all year long.
Everyone, please welcome Vicky Fang, Jennifer Varanini Sanchez, Bassem Youssef, Ross Burach, and kindergarten teacher Barby Garibaldi.
Hello, everyone. My name is Barby Garibaldi, and in honor of World Read Out Loud Day, I wanted to welcome you to offer you our very first ever Parents Chat. I'll share a little bit about myself. I am a bilingual educator with a master's degree in childhood education and a bachelor's degree in English language arts. I have 10 years professional experience teaching highly diverse communities. I am an alumni of New York City Teaching Fellows with its continued devotion to its core mission of serving diverse student populations. As a parent of 2 children in middle school, I have served on the parent-teacher organizations and acted as a parent-teacher liaison for my children's schools. Reading to my children has always been some of my favorite time spent with them, so I'm honored to be able to host tonight's event. World Read Out Loud Day is a global holiday celebrated the first week of February all over the world. We know how important reading out loud is for our children, and as teachers, we often talk to each other about the different ways we incorporate it into our curriculum. But as parents, and yes, I mentioned I'm one too, we rarely have time to stop and sit down, never mind compare notes about our reading rituals. That's especially true now more than ever, that spaces for parents to connect with each other have become fewer and farther between. In some cases, no in-person PTO meetings, less casual chats over coffee during morning drop-off, or no school events where parents are welcome. So this year, we wanted to get together with some of our 2022 top Read Out Loud book pick authors and friends and connect about some of the common themes we experience as parents. Let me introduce you to our 4 amazing guests. Vicky Fang has designed technology experiences for kids at Google and Intel Labs, where she's designed robots, installations, games, activities, and more. She started writing to support the growing need of early coding education, particularly for girls and minorities. She's the author and sometimes illustrator of 15 new and upcoming books for kids, including Invent a Pet, I Can Code, and Friend Bots. Layla and the Bots is her first chapter book series, with a 4th book coming out this March. Welcome, Vicky.
Thanks for having me.
Our next guest is Ross Burach, is the creator of the growing and irresistibly funny The Very Impatient Caterpillar series that includes The Impatient Caterpillar, The Little Butterfly That Could, Goodnight Butterfly, and a forthcoming title in 2023. All the books combine curriculum-friendly science topics with relatable social-emotional themes. Ross's other acclaimed books include the picture book Truck Full of Ducks, the board books I Love My 222, Potty All-Star, High Five Farm, and High Five Animals, named the best board book of the year by Parents Magazine, and the Acorn Early Reader series Bumble and Bee. Ross lives with his family in Brooklyn, New York. Welcome, Ross. Our next guest is Bassem Youssef, aka the Jon Stewart of the Arab world. He was a heart surgeon in his home country of Egypt before becoming the host of Al Barnameg, the first political satire show in the Middle East. He has appeared on The Daily Show, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and other late night shows, and was also featured in Time Magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world. He lives in LA with his family, and his book series, The Magical Reality of Nadia, was inspired by his real life experience. Welcome, Bassem.
Thank you for having me.
Our next guest is Jennifer Varanini Sanchez. Jennifer is a blogger turned social media influencer and a fierce Down syndrome and adoption advocate. She leads an active life balancing a direct sales career, all while raising 4 teenagers. Her youngest 2 children, Joaquin and Sophia, both have Down syndrome. Sophia was adopted from an orphanage in Ukraine. and has become an outspoken champion about the importance of embracing and celebrating our differences and being confident and proud of who you are. With Jennifer's support, Sophia has been featured on Inside Edition, NBC Nightly News, The TD Jakes Show, and even starred in an episode of ABC's family hit show, Switched at Birth. She also models for inclusive brands such as Target, Old Navy, Gap, and Abercrombie, just to name a few. Wow, Sophia's busy. This year's World Read Out Loud Day top book pick, You Are Enough by Margaret O'Hare, is inspired by Sophia's universal message of belonging. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much.
I'm so excited to have you all here tonight. We'll also be giving away 5 collections featuring a selection of this year's top book picks, including some books by these fine people here. For a chance to win, leave your questions for the panel in the comment section. I'm sorry. Welcome, everyone. How are you all doing this evening?
Good. It's great.
Hey, thank you.
You guys, it's Monday night, end of January, and I'm feeling it. How do you get yourself and your kids geared back for the week after the weekend? What are some tips and tricks to get you started back up?
I just tell them it's 9 o'clock, sleep. It's school tomorrow, and that's it. I mean, there's not a lot of conversation here. It's just
There's no negotiation.
Yeah, I just
Right.
go to sleep right now. That's it.
So my guys always negotiate with me, right? Like they're like 5 more minutes, 2 more minutes, or they brush their teeth really, really slow, right? So,
Famous, I need a glass of water.
right. But I can't even get mad at them because I used to do the same thing to my mom. So
Exactly.
I have
right,
one kid who gets very sad on Sundays, and he and dad talk about how they're both sad, and then the other one and I are not sad on Sundays.
you guys are ready for the week. I'm like, we're not sad.
Yeah.
How about you?
No,
Tips
I mean,
or tricks?
My kids have to get up pretty early to catch the bus, so they're kind of exhausted by the end of the day, which is kind of nice. But yeah,
That's nice. Yeah. Mine are like, are you trying to get rid of us? I'm like, never, never.
I think after COVID, both of us are ready to part ways at the beginning of the week. They cannot go back to school. They cannot wait, and we cannot wait to let them go. So
Right. You're like,
it's
this is
amazing
a mutual agreement. We're
it's
good.
great. Yes, like we got enough of each other.
That's awesome. All right, so let's talk a little bit about reading, which is why we're here celebrating World Read Out Loud Day. Do you guys have any favorite childhood reading memories? Think about that one. I just remember my mom telling me it was time for bed and still reading.
No, I remember my mom reading for me the pop-up books. Remember the
that's
books that
sweet.
like pop-up
Yeah.
stuff, and I used to like it because I just like have all of these moving parts, and I can't even remember what was it about. I just like remember the moving parts. I remember the 3. That's like my first 3D animation. I'm old. I'm 48 years old, so that's kind of like in the last century, literally. And this is before Pixar became Pixar. We had our own 3D animation in a book.
There you go. There you go. How about you guys?
I just love the special. I remember just that was the one time my mom would slow down and spend a little like quality time. So it was really meaningful. I was the oldest of 4. So it was just like, if there was any chance to get her one-on-one, that was like my favorite. So
It's so sweet.
Yeah. I used to love. I had like a reading light, and it was like the coolest thing ever to me as a kid. And now it's kind of cool because I see my kids like they have this like reading light that they treasure, and it was just like this really amazing thing. You can like put the cover over your head, you turn the reading lamp on, you can just like go anywhere. And it's like a very cool atmosphere. Yeah.
That's awesome. How about you, Vicky?
I remember reading the first like chapter book I read was Charlotte's Web, and I read it with my mom, and we read it in her bed, and she had like a lamp next to her bed. And I remember reading the book and loving the book, but I also remember her constantly saying, like, make sure the book is in the light. Make sure you're 12 inches away from the book.
all the rules.
Like instructions, yeah.
And I feel like I do that to my kids now. I'm like, don't read in the dark, read in the light. Make sure.
Don't hurt your eyes. Yeah.
Don't hurt your eyeballs. All right. And as parents, do you guys ever have you ever felt like intimidated about reading out loud as a parent, like the expectation or anything to that extent? Have you been nervous about reading to your children?
I mean, I get nervous if my kids, when I'm reading a book, one of my books to them, and they don't laugh when I want them to laugh.
Aww.
And they're just like, oh, no.
I try not to read mine too much because I worry they'll be like, "Oh, I don't want that one again." And
yeah.
You're like, no.
I just loved it because it's when I could get kind of goofy with them and make like the voices of the characters, and I think they got to see like a different side of me, not the like, parent telling them what to do, but being a character. And I just, like one of my favorites is Giraffes Can't Dance, one of my favorite books, and it's just like I would be silly with them.
No, it's sweet.
For me, my daughter kind of like, because we kind of moved her a lot because we had to change a lot of countries until we came here. So she used to not read, but kind of watch cartoons on a very like on a mute. So she had to read the subtitles. So she ended up reading for me. So she's the one who's like, she's the one who's always reading out loud for me. So I guess kind of cartoons were good for us.
Hey, whatever works, right? It's reading. It's reading.
Options for reading. Yeah.
Exactly. Now, we're all busy, right? Let's talk about busy parenting, right? We're balancing careers, and even those of the moms that are, or parents that are homemakers, it's nonstop being a parent, right? It's 24/7. So the idea of having it all, the myth of it, how do you guys as authors, because so much of what you do has to deal with literacy and reading, how do you get excited about reading to your children? How do you try to get yourself ready of like, I've had a long day, I'm exhausted, but I'm going to make this time? Like, how do you psych yourself up for it?
I feel like reading to my kids is like the escape hatch, because I have two boys and they, if left to their own devices, they create chaos. So if I start reading a book, one of them will sit down with me and then the other one will sit down. And then if I stop, they'll just be like, "Oh, give us the book," because now they're into it.
Oh,
so I feel like reading has saved me this pandemic.
And that leads me to the next question. Yeah. How do you get yourself ready in general, and how has the pandemic affected you? So Vicky, in your regard, it gives you structure and order, right? And you kind of make it seem like it's your idea, but then they take over. So that's awesome. What about the rest of you guys?
Well, Nadia, she's 9 years old. She's almost 10. So she doesn't need my help at all. She kind of like, she likes to read by herself. And I kind of, when she reads the books about discovery and animals, I kind of like, I learn a lot since English is my second language. So I get a couple of new words every time when I read with her, or she reads to me, basically. But now I do more kind of reading for my younger child, Adam. He's 4.5. He's on the spectrum, so I have to kind of like do more of like animation and reading with him. So this is a way that we can connect together without having to feel that it's a chore, because this is something that I can get his attention to do. So I find it a privilege.
That's amazing. That's great. And yeah, we definitely don't want it to feel like a chore for the kids. How about you, Ross and Jennifer?
I was just going to say, with the pandemic, so much is online, so much is on a screen, that reading is like one time to get off all the electronics and get back to the basics. Because, they're not, well, hopefully our kids are all back in school now, but for a while there, it was like, I just needed them to get off of a screen. So the pages of the book were much more enticing, I think, for them during the pandemic, because it was different.
That's great.
Yeah, I would second that. So with my kids, it's like, they're just sitting in, at the beginning, they were just looking at Zoom, and now it's like they just can get lost in the book. You can get lost in it with them. And there are, I think, like Vicky was, I forget actually who mentioned it, but there's so many books that I didn't read as a kid that now you can rediscover and read with your own kids, and it's kind of like this like nice second chance to discover these books that you missed. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, as a teacher, I used to always get questions of parents concerned about reading out loud. Having, we recommend children reading 20 minutes a day, depending on, the grade, and it's daunting for parents, right? Like, how have you set up a space in your day or a routine for reading out loud? Something practical, right? Like, I always tell my parents, like, it doesn't have to be like the perfect tent with the fairies flying around. Like, what does your reading routine look like that is doable and not scary for parents watching?
I'll just jump in. Sophia loves to have her books in the car. So driving to school and back, she gets her books out and reads aloud to me. So that's kind of when we fit it in. so I can hear her and make sure she's, pronouncing the words correctly. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. Works nicely. She looks forward to that.
That's great. That's great. So even reading in the car can be something. It doesn't have to be at home. It doesn't have to be, in bed or whatever, right?
Right.
How about the rest of you guys? Any ideas to give parents ideas on how to make it less daunting for those that need to get started?
So for me, I use it in a different way. I don't kind of again, my daughter is older, so she comes with all of these questions, but she has her iPad. So instead of doing a screen time like games, I said, like, why don't you Google it and come back to me?
Oh.
So she Googles the word and we come back and we discuss it, and then we have a more of a discussion of what she read, and we kind of like we build on it, so it becomes like a kind of a partnership between me and her, finding something new.
That's great. And that's empowering Nadia to do the research and own it and feel like she's teaching you a little something, right? And it's not just daddy teaching her, right?
She teaches me a lot.
That's amazing. How about you, Ross and Vicky? Any ideas on how to make a reading routine less daunting for those tired parents? I mean, we're all tired, right? Like it's hard. It's hard out there.
I think it's like the same as anything. Like, don't get mad at yourself, because there's so many nights where I'm just exhausted, and like my wife is just exhausted. And if you can't get to it, don't. I think it's like, don't be so hard on yourself. Just do your best if you can get to it, and if you can, it's okay. But just not, it's like just short stories. It doesn't have to be this like graphic novel or middle grade. It could just be anything. Just like, even if it's 10 minutes,
right?
But just don't be too hard on yourself if you don't like.
Yeah. I love that because the expectations that we put on ourselves, sometimes it pressures us to, oh my God, I'm not doing the 20 minutes, or I missed the day or whatever. So it's great to hear, that it's okay if you miss a day or two. How about you, Vicky? Any ideas on making it less daunting?
Yeah, I mean, we just kind of have books in like piles and corners all over the house, and I kind of try to rotate them, or like, throw a couple in the car, like she was saying, but I don't, I let them pick, but they discover them because they're just wandering around and they see a book and they'll be like, oh, okay. And then if I switch them out, kind of like their toys too, they get bored of them. But if you hide some and swap them out,
like toys. I used to do the same thing. Yeah, with toys. Yeah. Great.
We put up like library shelves in the playroom so they could act, like you said, Vicky, so they can see the books, because I think that helps get them curious and interested. So kind of do a faux library in our house.
Yeah, that's great. And even like Vicky's background is kind of like a library, like a little Barnes and Nobles type, like what would you want to, entice them into it and make them, again, giving them the power of choice, which is important to a reading routine. That's wonderful, guys. Thank you so much. And we all know that representation, diversity, and giving children the opportunity to feel seen in the stories they read is important, right? What are some of the stories you wish you had seen growing up? And what are the stories that you see that your children are looking for nowadays?
Well, my daughter likes kind of like connects automatically with stories that have, as you say, like different kind of diversity, even not just like in books, but we a few days ago we watched Encanto, and we're not Latinos, we're Egyptians, but like my daughter felt connected to it because we're kind of like the same line of the equator, basically. And this is why when I wrote the book, I thought of Nadia as being the feature of the book, and she saw herself there, because I wish that there would be more stories about ancient Egyptian history, where I come from, and because I feel it's kind of like a Game of Thrones for little kids. Sometimes it's epic. It has a lot of amazing adventures and stories and mythologies that can entice children adventure, like imagination. So this is the way that the kids feel connected to the stories that they read.
Absolutely. How about you guys? Vicky, any idea on what your children, what did you wish you saw when you were a kid, and what are your boys gravitating to?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was a kid, I didn't feel like I was missing something because it didn't occur to me. I just read what I read. And then as I grew older, I sort of felt like, oh, yeah, I don't fit in that story, or, I don't quite fit in the Renaissance fair that all my friends are going to. There's always just kind of this gap that I felt. And so I think I love seeing now that there's such a diversity of stories that kids can see themselves both in these variety of roles and characters, but also that all kids can see them in those different roles. So that was part of why I wrote Layla and the Bots. Was it's a girl of color who's in tech, and she's literally a rock star.
Love it. She's all the things. Yes, I love it.
I just wanted her to be this awesome, aspirational character that kids could think was cool. And I think, I think growing up, I didn't know what I was missing, but I think now as I'm older, I see that we want to provide things for kids to see themselves and to see diversity of characters in really cool positions.
Absolutely. How about you, Ross and Jennifer?
Well, I was always drawn. It's interesting because I think of who I am as a mother now, raising 2 children with a disability. But as a child, I was always fascinated with stories of people that were different. Like Helen Keller was one of my favorite stories to read. I just was mesmerized by her life story. And I remember reading The Diary of Anne Frank. I lived in a very sheltered suburban town, very much a bubble. So reading for me was my way of seeing like what else is out there, what other people are out there in the world. And so I just love how we've come so far. I'm 50, so I'm older than you, Bassem.
No, you don't look it. You don't look like it at all.
We have a contest, but there was not the same like range of books available in terms of all sorts of different inclusive type books. So I just love how far we've come in 50 years.
I love it too. How about you, Ross? What were you gravitating to as little Ross Burach?
Oh, I mean, I think I was always just gravitating towards like just funny books, which is like why I try and write books that are funny. But just like to kind of second what everyone else is saying is like I have 2 girls, and now I'm just always looking for books with like these like strong female characters, like the Rosie, Revere, like those books that kind of push that different thinking. So that's what they, I don't know what I didn't miss when I was a kid, like Vicky was saying, but now that's kind of what I look for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's so nice. It's so neat that we're able to give our students or our kids in this regard, the opportunity to see themselves in different lights, like Layla and Todd, she's a rock star. She's a scientist. She's in STEM. She's in this. She's just all these things. Right. And so Nadia, too, she's on a journey. She's empowered. But also, the fact that they have all these things and amazing authors like you guys giving this to them. So thank you for that. I have a question for Bassem and Vicky. How has being a parent affected the message you wanted to focus on in your writing?
You go.
I think for me as a parent, as I watch my kids grow up, the things that they're wrestling with make their way into my writing. So it's kind of shifted. Like when they were really little, I started writing, and it was kind of my own, like, I want them to see girls of color in STEM that are empowered. And then now as they're entering school, I see them, grappling with friendships for the first time. And so that's been making its way into my writing. Just watching the things that they deal with, the things that they worry about, the things they're curious about, the things that they think are funny. It worms its way in. So I think I have to keep writing a little older and older as they grow up.
That's great. Yes. I mean, you have great research right there.
Your books will grow up with you.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe the characters grow up as
yes.
Right?
And then my books are always behind because they publish 2 years later.
Yes,
so
that's true.
Like, why are you writing these baby books?
How about you, Bassem? What is how have you being a parent? And I know that a lot of Nadia, your daughter, is in your stories. So how did that come about?
Well, for me, I never thought of myself as a children's book author. I never wrote for children before, and even when I talked to my agent, I said like, I don't even know how to write a children's book, and I decided to just think about it, and I think what happened is that my own experience as someone who had kind of been penalized and punished because he had a different opinion and he was different. I kind of dictated that book that I wanted to write for Nadia, because Nadia now is someone who comes from a different country into a new place, and sometimes people don't understand her culture, where she comes from, and sometimes kids who are different are going to be treated in a way that are not really favorable. So kind of like I put my own experience into a book that hopefully that my daughter will avoid what happened to me in her new country.
That's
And
amazing.
so it is the fact of like someone who comes from a different culture into a new culture that she embraces, but sometimes she's misunderstood because she's different. And I would bring something from her own origins, like the mythologies and the magic and the stories from her own history, in order to make her understand or be more informed about her life today.
That's
So
great. Bringing in the historical part of it gives her pride, right?
exactly. No, it's not just that. It's kind of like, it's because history repeats itself. When she goes into these magical journeys in history, and she sees these mythological stories and what happened before, it inspires her to solve her problems in her modern days right now as a student in middle school America. And the beauty about that is that Nadia in the book is not far off from Nadia in reality. Because Nadia's book, she always liked to show off her fun facts. Almost she's flawed into like she's a little bit like too much. She wants to take it, and that's like my daughter Nadia. She's kind of like she has a mind of her own, and she likes to show off her information and knowledge because she's a nerd like her dad. And so
that's
it's
great.
kind
So
of,
she's in a lot of ways, she's your muse. That's great.
oh yeah, 100%.
That's awesome.
100%.
Congratulations on that. So sweet. How do your children, Bassem and Vicky, feel about your books? Like, do they know, Mom, you're an author, Dad, you're an author? Are they embarrassed by it? Are they like, let me take it for show and tell type of thing? How do they feel?
I feel that Nadia didn't care. It's kind of like, oh yeah, and then she read it, and
that sounds just about right.
yeah, she's kind of like she was not impressed. Like she's like, I don't know. I feel she doesn't understand what I went through. But then just this week, only 3 days ago, she had an assignment where she had to speak about the person with the biggest heart, and she chose me, and she brought my books into the classroom, and she showed it all of the class, and that was a surprise to me.
So proud of you.
And she talked extensively about the books and everything about it, and so like, why aren't you giving me kind of like appreciation?
Why am I not hearing this? Why am I?
Yeah, why I'm kind of like, so.
Why
Yeah,
does your teacher hear it? Why not me? Yeah,
that was a nice surprise. That was a nice surprise.
So beautiful. How about you, Vicky? Are the boys super proud, or they're still not getting it?
I feel like they're actually the same. They're like too cool to say anything. But then one day, my eldest came up to me. He's 8 now. So he has the books in his classroom. And he came up to me and he said, one of the kids was reading your book. I think you did a good job.
Pat on the back, Vicky. Yay.
I know. Like, I'll take it.
Yeah. You're like, that's worth more than any New York Times review or anything to that extent. That's awesome. All right. So, Ross, your books are wonderfully hilarious. And they deal with a lot of great social emotional topics that a lot of parents see, like impatience, excitement, anxiety. It's something that we see on a daily basis. And you use humor to discuss those things. Is humor something you grew up with, or it's something you develop as an adult or even as a parent?
I mean, I think, well, thank you so much for saying that stuff. I definitely grew up in like a very funny household where like my parents were funny. I have 2 brothers, an older and younger, and they were both funny. And you just kind of have to like, I think humor is just a lot of the times a way to get through, like any situation. It's like humor is like a really good thing to fall back on. So within these books, like I mentioned earlier, like I loved reading funny books. And now what I'm trying to do is and I realize like you can like teach kids and you can like relate to kids with a lot of these like social emotional aspects, whether it be impatience, believing in themselves, whatever it would be. You can kind of get them to enjoy reading with a funny character that they relate to, and then like they don't even realize it, but they're really kind of learning a lot of these lessons that you want to teach. So that's kind of why I want to use humor to kind of to teach these lessons, because I think it's like a fun way to get kids engaged, but it's also just like, it's very relatable.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you for that. All right. So Jennifer, you and I are the only non-authors in the chat tonight, and your daughter, Sophia, is the inspiration behind Margaret O'Hare's beautiful book, You Are Enough. Was there anything about the process of producing the book that surprised you? And how did you feel as a parent to see your daughter's story out there in a meaningful way?
Oh gosh, well, the process was really enjoyable. I'd always wanted to share Sophia's story, but I'm not an author, so it was like, how are we going to share this? So, meeting Margaret and working together, and her getting to know Sophia, and me sharing some of the important parts of raising her. It was just a really special way to create a book together. And then, of course, Sophia being our inspiration, it was quite easy because she's just so full of life. What was the second part of that question?
Like, how did you feel once the story was out there? How did you feel to see your daughter's story in such a meaningful way? Did you feel protected? Did you feel proud? Did any of that come up?
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah, no worries.
Very excited because I feel like her message is so important for children to hear and see and be exposed to. Obviously, she's a child with Down syndrome, and she is, she's an inspiring person. So for her to be able to share her story with classrooms across the country, being in the book fair, her seeing herself at the book fair, seeing her book and seeing her face on the cover, she's proud, I'm proud. And then also for children around her to see that people with a disability can be an inspiration for a book. I think that opens and blows some minds, and so for us, it's just a really exciting time because her message is being spread so much more.
That's amazing. Amazing. Thank you for that. My next question is for Vicky. Your books are all about the sciences and making STEM learning fun. And we know that you started writing to support the growing needs among girls and minorities for STEM education, which is amazing. Thank you for that. So can you tell us a little bit about what your hopes are in terms of your books and what they would instill for girls or minorities or children in general?
Yeah. I think I talked a little bit about, I want kids to see a girl of color who is awesome at technology and imagination and creativity. And she's a rock star. And I think that's important for both sides, both for girls of color to see themselves. There's a huge gender gap still in engineering and tech. There's a lack of diversity problems. So having those role models, they've seen through research that it helps, kids who are girls who see themselves in those roles. For example, Doc McStuffins, there's like a huge number of girls who are influenced by Doc McStuffins. So it's, being able to visualize themselves in those roles, and also having all kids, boys and girls, kids of color, kids who are white, being able to see those role models. So that was really important to me. And then I think more generally, the books are about problem solving. They happen to be solving a tech problem, but every time they go through a design thinking process, which comes from my product design background. So, they identify a problem, they go do some research, they come up with ideas, they come up with a solution, and then they always have to revise it because it doesn't go as planned. So it sort of gives kids that structure to approach their world, whether it's tech or not.
Right.
But an ability to solve problems and to feel empowered and to have that imagination to do so. So that's what I was trying to do with the books.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much, you guys. And it looks like we have some time to take questions from the audience. Let's see. It says here, how do you read to, and you guys can jump in obviously to help me with this. How do you read to a toddler who doesn't want to stop moving?
Chase them and read while they're running next to you. I don't know.
Well, I have an idea. How about you maybe try reading something very short, maybe 2 pages, while they're having a snack and they're kind of, forced to sit on a high chair or something where, or a car seat, maybe somebody is reading to them in the back seat, or you're making up a story in the car. And you say, once upon a time, there was whatever you see on the road, as you're, having them kind of strapped up and in place. Do you guys have any suggestions?
So I don't have exact that problem, but sometimes we'd use a trick. I use Nadia's help with Adam. So I would kind of make Nadia come and kind of sit next to me and read. So Adam kind of feels left out, so he comes and joins.
Yeah.
So
what is she doing? I want to do it too.
Yeah, so the kids wants to be included, and but again, I mean, it's not foolproof. It could work or not, but that's if you have someone else in the room, and then the kid will see you guys involved in doing something, they would want to join in.
Right. That's a great suggestion. Thank you, Bassem.
My kids also, as toddlers, they loved interactive books or some of the more tactile board books. So Lift the Flap or Press Here, where they can interact with the dots. So maybe finding some books that are interactive.
Absolutely. That's a great idea. Thank you for that. And then we have another question. It says here, we have a lot of questions about reading with older kids. Are there any reading rituals that those of you that have older children use to keep them reading with you or to you? So those of us that have older kids, that would be Jennifer and I guess, right? And Bassem too. I don't know, how old are your daughters, Ross?
Yeah,
Oh, you're muted, I think, Ross. We can't.
My wife, what they do is a lot of times they'll pick a book or like a series that they have movies. So it's kind of like they'll read the book and then kind of as like a reward, they get to watch the movie at the end of it. So that's kind of been like a fun little way to get, just like a little tradition.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
My son's into anime and I know nothing about it. So I'll try to get him books on his hobby or whatever he character, and he'll tell me all about it by reading. And so like Bassem, he's teaching me like another world. And if I know it, I just pretend I don't.
How old is your son?
He's
How old
13.
is your son?
He's 13.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. So that's really neat. And then my 11-year-old loves chatting me up about whatever she's reading. So she'll say, Mommy, in this book, they're giving you clues on, I don't know what. And she kind of like makes the world go round and round. I'm like, oh my God, so many words. It's so fast, right? So when you're giving them the power of picking what book to read to you or what book you can read together, I think is fundamental for older children or any children in general. Do you have any ideas, Jennifer? I know you have teenagers.
Yeah, I have older I have 12, 13, newly 17 and 18. We have been having fun doing more like biographies or autobiographies of like their favorite singers or their favorite, historical character. And or my husband and I will share like our favorite like older novels, and that's always like exciting to like get into the next genre. But I love Ross's idea. The Harry Potter books were like revolutionary in our house because everybody wanted to read them, and we were the same, like watching the movies and comparing notes. How close was it to the movie? So I think going off their interests is really key.
I agree. Absolutely. And then our next question says, do any of you have reluctant readers? And have you found ways to support and encourage them at home? So a child that doesn't want to read and doesn't like to read, what are your ideas on how to entice them?
I'll just jump in real quick. One of my boys found their joy of reading through like funny books. So The Diary of a Wimpy Kid was like his entryway into like that comic type style reading was the key for him to kind of understand the beauty of storytelling. So again, like being creative, maybe it's not necessarily the books on your shelf, go to the library, check out all different kinds, maybe a funny story, maybe comic strip type style or anime,
Yeah, I agree.
Bribery.
I was thinking
that. I mean, like if they need to like do something that they would really like like watching the screens, playing games, they need to work.
There you go.
Yeah, it's like crime and punishment. Yes. Yeah. I know. I'd say it's too dark. I understand. Yes.
I love it. Okay, last question, you guys. How do you find all the energy to read out loud to your kids after long days? Where do you find the time to write? So it's directed to the authors and writers.
I guess I would address it with it's definitely not easy, and but I guess for me it's kind of My kids are in my almost like my marketing age, like where the books are. So it's like I had this like built-in like marketing group. So you can kind of, it's like the two birds with one stone thing where I can like work on stories, or even if I'm working on a story, I can read it to them. And that's kind of like, it benefits me a little bit and it benefits them. It's kind of like this like fun little balance. But I mean, it's really just about, again, like I said, it's not like putting too much pressure on yourself. It could be anything. Like Highlights magazine has like really great like short 2-page stories or
Yes.
poems, or it could be like you mentioned about coming up with your own story. And a lot of times with like my kids, like, you know, I'll have them come up with a character, and like we'll write down the story quick, and then they'll do some drawings, and they're creating their own book that they'll want to read. So it could be even not finding a book, but creating your own. And like there's this added element that really draws them into the story because it's a story they've created. So, you know, it's kind of doing like a combination. It doesn't always have to be reading. It could be creating a story.
Absolutely. That's
Yeah.
a great suggestion, Ross. Thank you. All right. So do you guys have any other feedback for the children? Are you finding energy? Again, I think it's just recapping what we've all said, right? Like being okay with, you know, being tired and doing your best. So you didn't read for 30 minutes, you read for 10 minutes. I think as parents, we put these unbelievable, you know, pressure on ourselves. And I always talk about, oh, you know, today I was 100% mom. When I feel like I've done the extracurricular, I made dinner from scratch, I worked the whole day, you know, the house is clean, the kids' clothes and uniform is clean, but I'm exhausted, right? So I'm like, I don't want to mess up my 100%. I'm going to go read a story. But I should be okay to like, hey, I did what I could. And I am growing and pushing and motivating my reader and listening to them and going to the library and making that part of, you know, the extension of the home to school connection. You know, if your child's learning a unit on animals, maybe you want to go to the library and, you know, get some books on the animals they like or whatever it is. So,
or it might also be that time, because I was going to touch upon this, that time where they might ask the questions that they need to ask you. So make the time, because this is the time that they're going to be quiet with you. They're going to ask you maybe things that they experienced and have questions about, or problems that I know that it's hard, but those moments before bed are so precious. And as a mom of older teens, I don't get those times anymore. I wish I could go back.
Yeah.
And I know you hear that all the time, but do it, because it's just such a short time in your life, and
it is,
and it's precious. So
I agree, Jennifer. Someone once told me the days are long, but the years go fast. And I'm not trying to be cheesy, because they do grow fast, and my guys are still in middle school. Well, I just wanted to thank you all for your thoughtful.
I want to add one more thing
Yes.
I want to echo Ross here, because he said something. I want to say it maybe in the same. I want to say exactly what you said, but in a different way. Parents, don't beat yourself up. Seriously, don't beat yourself up. Some days you're not going to be able to do that. Some days you're not going to be able to achieve the 20 minutes, whatever. I mean, we are like moms and dads, especially moms, are under a lot of pressure, and we don't need like an extra pressure of the expectation of society, or never feel that you're a bad parent. And because like you might see social media, it's just like, oh, how are they doing this? Sometimes you can't, and that's okay, because you have already done a lot as a parent and as a spouse, and sometimes some days are difficult, some days are tough. So don't get to you, and don't beat yourself up. You are
surviving.
You are as good as you are.
We're in this with you. We're on this.
We're surviving.
Yeah.
Yes.
World Read Out Loud Day.
I mean, I don't know you about you guys, but like I'm not that I'm not really doing everything that we say that we did, because some days are difficult. It's difficult,
Right.
and
Right.
sometimes
And
you don't achieve
Bassem.
these milestones, these marks. So it's fine. Like, you know, but you know, give yourself a pat on the back, more of a slap on the wrist.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for all of that. And yeah, we are surviving here with you. We're trying our best. And I think the biggest message is just try to make whatever time, if it's 2 minutes, 3 minutes, we see you, we are proud of you, and we're right there with you in the trenches. So thank you all for your thoughtful questions. And I'm so sorry we couldn't get to them all. Catch up with our guests on social media for more thoughtful insight and upcoming events and releases. I'm thrilled to have been able to celebrate World Read Out Loud Day with you, and to host our very first ever Parents Chat. Thank you so very much, everyone. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Jennifer, Ross, and
Thanks.
Bassem. Have a great night, and we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
A round of applause for our panelists. That was super informative and helpful. I'm sure I wasn't the only person taking notes. I'll also be taking notes on tips and tricks and how to maximize my read alouds during our brand new reading tutorial, which launches tomorrow, February 1st, and will be available on demand on Scholastic's Facebook page.
Then at 11:30 a.m., we're looking forward to seeing all of you for a treasured World Read Aloud Day activity with Peter H. Reynolds. Join Peter for a tutorial on how to make your own reading crown to help show others how you see and experience your favorite stories.